Hey everyone, we're at CES 2018 at the Thermaltake suite now, looking at a couple of new cases and some new cooling products. That's kind of what they do. So the first thing I want to point out is that we'll be talking about a 200 millimeter fan that's becoming more of a trend. It's kind of like the industry is regressing back to 200 millimeter fans that were popular ages ago. But we're going to start with the View 37, which is this case here. I actually have two side panels on here. It does not come with two of them. They are what Thermaltake calls panoramic panels. They've had them on previous cases. It's basically the top and the side in one. It's an acrylic panel, and then the front of the case is also an acrylic panel. Before that, this video is brought to you by EVGA and the X299 Dark motherboard for the Intel high-end desktop CPUs. The X299 Dark is one of the only motherboards on the market with proper VRM cooling. We've tested this and found significant performance increase over those without active cooling on the VRMs. And you can learn more about the X299 Dark at the link in the description below. So for this version of the build here, it's got 200s in there. Stock, this case will come with three 140 millimeter fans, and then either $110 or $140. At $110, it's three 140 millimeter fans, single color blue LED. At the higher price point, it's three 140 millimeter fans, RGB. They are the rain fans from Thermaltake, so you're all familiar with those at this point, and they will probably come with the controller that those rain fans typically come with. In terms of case specs, it does not have the crossbar here that you normally have, the structural crossbar, so instead you got the what they call, again, panoramic view. Features include a vertical GPU. It's a bit close to the acrylic. Like we've said in the past, you would want to use an open loop block on your GPU to get full advantage of any kind of vertical mount, but they do have one there. I don't know if it will come with a riser cable. That's TBD, as is pretty much everything on this case. Specs may change, but and we don't have a release date either. So yeah, there's a small stand for vertical GPU mounts. You can fit all of the open loop stuff, reservoir, full size, all of that, and then they even have a vertical side-mounted radiator that's pushing air that way, and out that side of the case is the steel panel that has a mesh on the opposing side, so the air actually can escape, which is something we talked about with the Enermax Sabre Ray as well. For the front panel, now with this configuration, 200 millimeter fans, they are mounted on the outside of the chassis, and it's also got a thin mesh on the sides. You may find that familiar to the H500P. One could reasonably assume that you would encounter some of the same challenges that we found with the H500P in that situation. The 140s, I am fairly certain you would be able to mount on the inside if you did not have a vertical radiator there. So if you reconfigure this build without the vertical radiator and fans, you'd probably have the 140s on the inside, in which case some of the concern is alleviated, but you do still have obviously a piece of acrylic in the front of the case. So this is the View 37. There's also a View 32 we'll be looking at momentarily. And then for the fans, so we have, let me get rid of this. So the fans, the 200s that are in here are kind of still in prototype mode, but we've got one here. This is a Rain Plus 20 fan for centimeters, obviously. Still prototyped. It's got two lighting zones, which you can kind of see on the case behind me when the light rotates around the rain. So two lighting zones, and I think it has something like 16 LEDs in there total, or 18, somewhere in that range. No price yet, no release date, not much information on the specs, but they're looking at making them. There's been also a new engine cooler. The engine 27 we looked at previously, or maybe the 37, I think it was the 27. So now there's a smaller version, the engine 17, the number standing for the millimeters in height. So it's 17 millimeters tall, pretty damn tiny. You would put this on a very low TDP system, obviously. It's not going to cool a whole lot it's not going to dissipate a ton of heat, but it's also not meant to. You put it in something like a small form factor box that has zero height clearance, except for maybe 20 millimeters. So they're looking at doing one of those. No price on that yet either. We'll move over to the View 91 briefly, and then I get to some of the cheaper cases. So the two things to point out here, there's a View 91, which we'll get to, the View 71. We reviewed this previously and found that it performed actually pretty well for two fans, basically. I mean, it kind of surprised us for GPU performance with the original View 71. The only change here is the color of the chassis. Instead of black, it's the titanium color, as they call it, so it's kind of an off-white. For the View 91, it's just a large case with a huge glass side panel, and it's really meant for showroom builds. You wouldn't buy this for consumer, but yeah, basically put a home server or something in there, or just a fish tank of a PC with the open loop that they have here. it's going to be expensive. It's going to be like $400 to $500. So not consumer product, but we'll point it out. And then we can get to the consumer products after I quickly mention the level 20 as well, which we previously saw at Computex, but has been mostly finalized at this point. And we've got some B-roll of it. It's a little bit wider than Computex. Otherwise, it's pretty much the same idea. So you can watch that coverage for more information on the level 20. So for the last couple of cases, you probably haven't seen these on other channels or won't for a while because it's in a separate room. These are actually the more affordable cases that I think for our audience are probably the most interesting. They're less flashy and more practical. None of these are final. We have prices, but we don't necessarily have fan spec or things like that. So the main ones, these are the Versa series, the H26 and the H27. It's the same chassis, the same tooling. The difference is in the front panel, where this one has a mesh for the bottom, and it can fit two 120mm fans in those bottom two slots. There's no fan port in the top because it actually supports 5 1/4 bays. I know some of you still want those. These cases do actually have them, and you sacrifice the top fan slot as a result, but that's kind of the trade-off with 5 1/4. It can fit 120 in the back as well. No vertical GPU, nothing fancy like that. It's just a tempered glass side panel on the side and then mesh in the bottom. And these I think are going to be $60 from what I understand now. No final spec on the fans. This is probably the one I would be most interested in. This one, you've got the blocked off panel, but I guess if you want that for cheap, you could get it. But yeah, I definitely recommend that one over the other. The other case is the J series. So there's a J22 and a J23. Same thing, same internal chassis, same tooling, different front panel. The one that I prefer has a mesh for the bottom front as well, and that can fit 2 fans in it, same spot. I'm not sure if they're 120s or 140s on that one, but it can fit 2 in the bottom, 1 in the back, and it has a power supply shroud with some ventilation meshing stabbed in the top of it for lower PCIe devices, and it's also got tempered glass. That one's gonna be $55, so $5 difference between the two, from what we understand now, TBD on everything else. And that's pretty much the Thermaltake suite. There's a couple other things as always, but we'll leave those for later. You can subscribe for more CES coverage. Patreon.com/GamersNexus helps out directly. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.